Truth, logic, action, power. It's the GreggHoush Show here on New Revolutionary Radio. From the Leonard School in Malden, Massachusetts, Gregg and company are here to bring a sense of ethics to your news. Whether it's politics, activism, or current events, we always seek to inform and never to deceive. Let's start the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 14 of the GreggHoush Show. Sitting here with me is co-host Kayla Avery.
You didn't say wonderful this time.
Wonderful co-host Kayla Avery.
That's
and
me.
Co-host Mac.
Mac Daddy, it's the Mac in black. He's back in Mac. He's the Mac attack.
Are you all sick of that yet?
Nope,
it's
not even
gonna
close.
Stop. It's not going to stop.
No, I'm not. It's never gonna. It's probably gonna get longer.
And today our special guests are Dana Gottesfeld and Marty Gottesfeld. Hi. Definitely have an interesting show for you today. We're going to be talking with Marty direct from Plymouth Prison here. Surprisingly,
Probably should tell everyone why he's there.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump right into this as he's actually on the phone for a short period with us here, and we want to get into it. So let's start. We're here because because I personally, after reading all of this, think that Boston Children's Hospital might need some court rulings against them due to all of what they've done here. Let's start with that. But as I understand things, this really started with a child that was taken from her parents, brought into custody, made a ward of the state, against her will, against the parents' will, and all due to a misdiagnosis. And when the parents argued that it was a misdiagnosis, they only got more mistreated. And that's kind of, as I understand, the very basics of the beginning of what happened with Justina. And so I'd love you guys to kind of tell your story and kind of bring some of this out. So Dana, am I close there?
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Yeah, this is a story that originally the drama took place in 2013, 2014, and now the dust has settled and legal proceedings have begun. What happened was Justina has mitochondrial disease, so her mitochondria can't make the energy her body needs. So when she got sick, the effects were really dramatic, and she was taken in an ambulance to Boston Children's. She was only supposed to be there for a short time to see a specialist. But instead, the doctors decided that they wanted to change her medications and separate her from her parents because they claimed that the medications her parents were giving her were called, quote, like over-medicalizing her.
But those medications that she was getting were due to a previous diagnosis that was correct.
Right, but it was by like an expert in the field, and these doctors were like not specialists in it. Had one of them, they were like psych doctors and recently out of medical training.
And so they went straight for a psych diagnosis and wouldn't take no for an answer.
Right. So her parents said, we respect your opinion and we're going to leave now and go back to our regular doctor. And they said, no, you're actually not. You're going to stay in the psych ward. So they used the courts. They went to the judge and took custody of her and made her a ward of the state. She was locked in that psych ward for over a year before being transferred to a behavioral modification program called Wayside Youth and Family. And basically what we see here has been something that goes on actually more than just Boston Children's Hospital. I've seen it in hospitals throughout the country, specifically in Arizona and other places. And it's kind of the unbridled strength of the government to intervene into the family life and separate families. So when we saw this, there was all kinds of concerns, maybe across political parties or, her parents weren't known quantities. How do we believe them? But at the end of the day, we saw that a child was being literally tortured, according to the reports getting out from her parents, pictures, a whistleblower nurse, like all reports kind of indicate
that whistleblower was Olga?
No, Olga Roche was the head of the Department of Children and Families. The nurse was Katie Higgins. And
she worked there.
She worked there in the psych ward before Justina, and she was using words like torture, like UN Convention Against Torture. So that's kind of how what drew us to the case is regardless of all of the other things, a child was being tortured. So we knew that there needed to be an intervention because, as her parents said, they were afraid she was going to die.
And at that point, there wasn't much media coverage. There wasn't much media outcry about it because no one had heard. And, Boston Children's wasn't telling anyone.
No, actually, there was. They did a great.
So,
Her family was part of the conservative movement, and they were getting all kinds of great coverage from Fox, from Hannity, Huckabee, all these people that you don't necessarily associate
all the people on
with.
the right.
Right, and it was really we never saw that before. We never saw the right take such a strong position in this case. So it was great to see.
So then it gets to your ears, Marty, right? And you can hear me over there, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So then it gets to you, and I got to read the Rolling Stone article today, which we're gonna definitely send out on the show's website and everything else. I think it's pretty good, and I like the way they portray your part of the case. So, I don't know if you've actually gotten to read that. Have you? You didn't get any pre-copies or anything out of them, did you?
No, I've only heard kind of the opening paragraph and the ending paragraph, actually, so far.
Well, so then, in your own words, you were at this point where they've got her, and the press on the right are starting to talk about this, but nothing seems to be getting done, and you wanna fight about what's going on here. You wanna inform. You want the internet to sort of play its role of getting the message wider, right? So what are you thinking at that time?
Well, being sad is, a child being tortured. And I actually first heard about the case in December of 2013. I want to also clarify, Justina was in the psych ward called Beta 5 at Boston Children's Hospital from April. She was at the hospital from February 2013. She was put in the psych ward in April 2013.
Yeah, that's
right. She stays in the psych ward until January 2014. We first picked up the case in December of 2013, but there was not a lot of information out there at that point. Like, that whistleblower nurse had not written her letter. Also, Barry Pollock, who is a former federal prosecutor in Boston. He also happens to be the longest tenured board member on the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And he ends up writing an open letter around the same time to the Department of Public Health, where he says this psych ward is, open quote, virtually synonymous with abuse for many children, close quote. So that had come out, as well as stories of many other families that have had this kind of thing happen at Children's. And in fact, in at least one case we know of, a child died as a result. That child's name was Cindre Highland. So fast forward a few months into March 2014, and now all this information is available, and now it's possible to vet the case. And we're seeing all of the coverage in the conservative media that that Dana was talking about just now. And to clarify a little bit more of what Dana said, we had been active in the fight to protect institutionalized children. So that's children in juvenile detention centers, boot camps, residential treatment programs, therapeutic boarding schools, orphanages, pretty much any place where they're not with their parents. For a little while at that point, and we had never seen a case like this cross the political aisle over to the conservative side with such fire, and we were hoping that it would become a rallying point for some bipartisan change to really protect these kids, because this kind of thing happens a lot more than you would think. So, Justina, mitochondrial disease is very painful, and so some of the meds that she was on were specifically for nerve pain. And when they took her off of those meds, she was in agony 24 hours a day, around the clock, for 13 months. She was on a heart medication, without which she was tachycardic, so that's an abnormally fast heartbeat. Her father said between 100 and 152 beats per minute. Uncontrollably, so you can imagine that's terrifying, right? If you're Justina and you're being denied your meds and your heart won't stop pounding and you're in pain all the time, you're locked in a psych ward, your parents are only allowed to visit you for 1 hour a week, there's armed guards sitting in on those visits, you're allowed a 1 hour phone call every week, but it's monitored by the people in the psych ward. They hang up the phone on you, seemingly for no reason. You're not allowed to discuss your condition or your treatment with your parents. And that's again with these armed guards and on these monitored calls. So Justina ends up sneaking notes to her family hidden in origami. And that's kind of how the Rolling Stone article opens, where she's saying, I'm being tortured. They hurt me all the time. They laugh at me. Please hurry. And that's the point that, I decided that something had to happen here. And, I've been a human rights activist for a long time, but to me, this cause transcended kind of normal activism. If you see someone getting mugged in an alley, right, you don't post that to Facebook or go walking around with a picket sign for that. You have to actually do something about that. So while I very much appreciate kind of the angle of being framed as this is an activism issue, right? To me, this is actually the defense of a human life. Justina is in a wheelchair. She has not been able to walk since they did this to her. In December 2012, right, there's video of her figure skating before this debacle at Boston Children's Hospital.
And as we understand it, she wouldn't be in a wheelchair if it wasn't for this treatment, because she was not heading in that direction under the proper medication and proper care.
Yeah, no, exactly. She contracts the flu in February 2013 or around that point, and the flu is known with mitochondrial patients to present serious complications. So that's why they sent her to Children's to see a gastroenterologist that had already been treating her, who already knew her case, and who had moved his practice to Boston Children's a month earlier. Instead of seeing that gastroenterologist, a young neurologist, 7 months out of medical training, named Dr. Jurian Peters, and a non-MD psychologist named Simona Bujrianu, who had no familiarity with Justina's case, decide that, no, this is not mitochondrial disease, a genetic condition that Justina's older sister was already being treated for, but that rather this was a psychological condition called somatoform disorder, wherein a patient thinks they're sick, and so real symptoms come from that. So it comes from the word psychosomatic, and so they want to take her off of her meds and lock her in the psych ward. And eventually they do that. But the parents, as Dana said, they protest. They don't want this to happen. They try to stand up for their little girl. The state comes in, takes custody. The hospital blames the parents, says the little group should be able to talk to the parents without supervision. And then the little girl ends up getting these notes out describing what's happening to her. And the really kind of most disgusting thing about this, right? Because anyone can make a mistake, right? And every once in a while, doctors make a mistake. They get a diagnosis wrong. Something happens. Like they're only human, right? We get that. But in this case, right, instead of owning up to that mistake because of the publicity, instead of saying, whoops, our bad, they dig in further and they try to, I guess, I'm not entirely sure what their kind of logic was, but you have the doctor who actually filed paperwork against Justina's parents. She gets moved to another hospital. They don't fire her, but they kind of shoo her out to MGH, where she still is. She's still at Massachusetts General Hospital. Now, this is the doctor that botched the Irish nanny case and also the Jeffrey Wilson case. So she actually has a little bit of a history here. Management doesn't, come forward and do the right thing. And so the kind of continues. They do get her out of the hospital in January 2014 once the bad publicity is starting to focus in on their psych ward. However, Boston Children's Hospital is still providing the treatment. They're still involved in her care, and it's still under their diagnosis while she's at this wayside place where a staffer assaults her while she's nude in the shower. I think that's a pretty good wrap up. If you have more specific questions, I'm happy to kind of answer them.
Yeah. So, here we find ourselves at the end of, all of this explanation that describes why you wanted to take part, why you wanted to do something to bring about some more people paying attention to this, some more, getting, honestly, if I understand your goals here, it was screw everything else, get her out, right? Save her life.
I was concerned that she would die. And her parents were in the media. They were saying, we're concerned our daughter is going to die. And their attorneys were saying this girl could die. And Justina was releasing those terrifying notes. I chose a plan of action that would not lead to anyone getting hurt. And when a lot of people, quite frankly, were calling basically to send in the Marines. Right? That's kind of what
Yeah, I saw
members
some
the
of that
public were
online.
calling for at this point. So I chose a plan of action that would not lead to anyone getting hurt, but that would make it clear to the hospital if their goal was to protect their reputation and their pocketbook, that continuing to hold on to Justina is not the way to do that. Felt they needed to be dissuaded, felt that they'd rather not own up to their mistake. They'd rather not let the girl go, because to do so would be bad for their reputation and their pocketbook.
It would probably
So the
also open them up
alternative had to be
to
worse,
more
right? The
legislation or
alternative
more
had to be worse
legal
than-
stuff. It'd probably also open them up to more legal problems. You know, they'd be admitting to wrongdoing at that point.
Yeah.
So
I think that's true.
I think we're about to lose you here.
No, we still have some more time.
We still have some more time?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. All right. So we've still got some more time here. So, my next question is, so we get to that point, and if I understand things correctly, it's about there where a video comes out that she shot on a cell phone that helps get her released back to her parents, right?
After the events the government alleges that I participated in, she is transferred to a facility in Connecticut, and her family is finally allowed less restricted access to her. And the whole time before that, they had not been allowed to take a picture of her. And she had, they'd not been allowed. There was a gag order, too. In November, Boston Children's Hospital gets up in arms with the prospect of the bad press because they've got a local Fox reporter who ends up, his name's Bill Berman, and he ends up winning the Edward R. Murrow Award for his coverage of this case. But he's setting up outside the courthouse, and Boston Children's, according to Justina's father, is up in arms. And so they ask the court for a gag order. The court provides a gag order. At that point, if Justina's parents talk to the press, they're looking at fines or even jail time. And so, the gag order gets lifted around February. At that point, the parents have a spokesperson. But then, a little while after the alleged events, they transfer Justina to a facility in Connecticut where her parents can take her out for the day. And at that point, her sisters actually pull her to the side and record a video of Justina in her wheelchair, terrified, frantically begging the governor of Massachusetts and the juvenile court judge to just please let her go home, that she needs to be home with her family, that she needs her medication, and she just wants to go home. And that video is absolutely heartbreaking. And as you can imagine, shortly after that video surfaces, she is actually allowed home. But in the meantime, the hospital has admitted to no wrongdoing, and her family has sued the hospital. It's a 35-page civil complaint, and it reads like a medical horror novel.
Wow. So, through all this, any actions you really took were, in an attempt to honestly free this person before she lost her life and to get her back to her parents and get her under the proper medical care due to what she had. So I'm right there with that. But the government really hates just about everything you did, as they do with anyone who they think they can hit with the CFAA, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which is really this unbelievably badly written, broad act from the 1980s that doesn't even know the internet exists. And now they're using this act against you, the same act that was used against Aaron Swartz. And in his case, it ended with the loss of his life due to the over-prosecution. And in yours, you're now sitting in jail awaiting trial. And for everyone who's read the Rolling Stone article, it says, still awaiting trial date. We got a date, and that date is January 16th of 2018. We found out yesterday, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that, you're facing what looks like a maximum of 15 years for what, in the end, they allege is a few hours of downtime over the span of a week of their website. That's absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right, in America, if you shoot somebody in a dark alley, that's fine, right? But if you shoot somebody in a dark alley because they're about to rape somebody, that's not a crime. And you can use physical force to defend another human being from grievous bodily harm or possible death. You try to use the internet to defend another human being from grievous bodily harm or possible death, and Adam J. Bookbinder and David Diadio, the two prosecutors who took over cybercrime after Stephen Heyman deprived us all of his little presence, they will come after you with this cudgel and try to put you in jail for a decade.
And all of them have Carmen Ortiz to thank for their special skills.
Yeah, in their special place. So, the way I like to frame it is this, right? I fall asleep every night with a clear conscience. They fall asleep every night with absolutely no conscience. Because while this is all going on, too, and they're prosecuting me, guess who is not being investigated at all? Not for accepting a ton of federal Medicaid money for a condition they knew Justina didn't have, which would be healthcare fraud. Not for lying on sworn court documents to deprive Justina's parents of custody. Not for seeking, or for in the case of the judge, issuing an unconstitutional, just blatantly unconstitutional gag order. I'm trying to think what else is there. And not for human rights violations and Eighth Amendment violations, freedom from cruel and unusual punishment, because what would happen is the Pelletiers were fighting to get Justina back. The hospital would punish them and punish Justina, and basically with the message of you guys better cut this out, or we're gonna make her life worse.
And for the
so
people
they're
who
not
think
facing
that's
even investigation for any of this stuff.
But the people who think that's crazy when you say that they were, what they were doing to the people inside, I say all you have to do is look at the whistleblowers. There have been 2 of them so far that spoke to this specific type of action happening in Massachusetts, and then 1 at the exact facility she was at. This isn't just people on the outside spouting off crazy ideas about what might be happening inside those walls that they can't get inside. This is people coming outside who were there telling us what was happening.
Yes, one is a former psychiatric nurse, Katie Hayes, that Dana mentioned, who wrote an open letter to the DCF commissioner and the governor of Massachusetts at the time, and she used the word torture. And having reviewed the relevant international law, like treaty, the UN Convention against Torture, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which the United States is the only country in the world not to have ratified. Okay, Somalia has ratified this treaty. Cuba has ratified this treaty. North Korea has ratified this treaty. Sudan has ratified this treaty. In fact, every single country on the president's travel ban list has this treaty except us. So that's a wonderful place to be. If you're a child, you're pretty much better off in terms of international law in any other country besides ours. Anyway, the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. If you read that and you read the work that the special repertoires on torture have done over the past decades or so, it's relatively clear that this is all torture.
We'll link to as much of this as we can.
Good intentions. Say again?
I said we'll link to as much of this as we can on the website so everyone can check all this fun stuff out.
Yeah,
By fun stuff, I mean horrible things.
So I've done a 35-page report on the Free Marty G page, and it's right there. You can read it.
Perfect.
And it's got 81 sources from the media, ranging from the Boston Globe, WGBH, all the way to the Blaze, all over. It's very, very well documented. And, the funny thing is, the U.S. Attorney's Office, under the Convention Against Torture, is actually obligated to investigate, prosecute, and punish all violations of the Convention Against Torture. And they will not even investigate Boston Children's Hospital. And we know because we put the FBI on the witness stand. And, we asked them, how soon did you start investigating the network outage? Oh, right away. We flew over there right away. And okay. Were you aware of allegations that Justina was being abused at Boston Children's Hospital? They answered yes. Did you investigate any of those allegations? They answered no. So apparently, like network outage, very important. FBI will immediately spend millions of dollars. Tortured child in a wheelchair.
So millions of dollars the FBI spent on figuring this out, prosecuting you, getting you to the point where you now have a trial coming up. And one of the more interesting angles, I think, for our audience is that on one of the computers you had that they took, there was an encrypted partition, a Lux partition, Luks for those who want to look it up. I believe this was an Ubuntu install?
Yes, I believe it was 1404.
So
I'm not entirely sure. Could have been 1310, but it was no older than 1310 and no newer than 1404.
So he had an encrypted partition on this, and it is no longer encrypted. They used a bunch of compute time on one of their wonderful server farms, or probably paid an outside one. It's in a bunch of this paperwork, but to crack the password to unlock this encrypted drive, and as I understand it, the password was 47 6 relatively random characters, letters, numbers, and symbols, meaning they spent a lot of money to break this and a lot of compute time. All to find, of course, nothing. There was nothing of any value on the other side of it. It was an exercise in futility. And again, all that while they're still not investigating the people who tortured children.
Yeah, that's completely accurate. That's why I say they have no conscience. I mean, it's not just the pissed off guy in jail. Like, you want to investigate me? Fine, I'll investigate them too. And when the FBI searched my house, and, I talked with Agent Housh, and I told him about some of the stuff these kids face, kids like Justina, and some of the kids who died. He promised me at the end of that search that he would be in touch with agents and do something to help the kids, and he never did. Okay,
we are definitely coming up on time here with this. For everyone out there who doesn't know, these phone calls to the prison are half an hour long, and then they get cut off. So at that point, we're going to talk a little more about this with Dana, and we're going to mention a few things you guys can do. One of them is there's a legal defense fund. It's on freemartygg.com. There's a donation button. If anyone can help, please do. There is, in all honesty, it's been interesting getting to know you, Marty, because we've talked a few times over the last week, and I get the sense that even though you're sitting in there, the thing you care about most is that this stops happening to other children.
Yeah, it's rare that a leading pediatric hospital show this kind of brutality. I'm used to it more from for-profit institutions that have more of an incentive there. But it's children are children, torture is torture, and computers are computers. And I think it's important to remember, what our priorities should be, and what law enforcement's priorities should be in terms of how they spend our tax money.
I think we can sign off there.
1 minute remaining.
I'm sure you all just heard that.
1 minute remaining,
so
everybody.
I think we're close. The one thing that I will say to Marty and Dana here is, I think the next episode we bring you guys on, I want to talk very specifically about kind of what you set us up for there, the troubled teen industry and its for-profit mistreatment of children, and
a lot of it happens offshores.
Yeah, and what can be done to at least start to inform people, if not more. So it's been great having you on, and good luck there, and we'll keep everyone up to date, get all the links, and there you go, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you for using global selling.
And there we go.
They're not sponsors of the show.
Yes, they do not only sponsor the show, but screw those guys.
Oh God, yeah. Anytime prison phone.
All the prison phone systems need to be fixed.
So we didn't really talk much about what he was being charged, like why he's in prison.
Yeah, we talked about the CFA a little, but only
you didn't
briefly.
even really explain what the CFA stands for. So, I don't know. Dana, can you kind of talk about the charges that have been brought against Marty a little bit?
Yep. So the first charge is intent to access an unauthorized computer. Gregg, anyone feel free to correct me if I get that wrong.
That's pretty much the trigger for the CFAA is unauthorized access of a computer you don't own.
Well, first you got to start with conspiracy, which is shitty.
Yeah. So the intent to access is up to 10 years, and conspiracy is up to 5 years. Conspiracy was for allegedly posting a video to YouTube that says "Let Justina Go," and I think it says talks about their servers, but it doesn't call for an attack or anything. But just posting something on YouTube is 5 years in federal prison charge. Up to 5 years.
Because they think that the video on YouTube is some kind of a call to arms for hackers, when if you watch it, he doesn't outright ask for any help on that front specifically.
Right. That's up to 5 years in federal prison for a YouTube video that doesn't ask for anything. So this is kind of like anything that touches a computer gets really shady.
Well, so when I was going through some of the press kit stuff, I don't think it's so much the YouTube video. I know there was a huge the emphasis on his Twitter account and his Twitter messages. What I thought was the most interesting part about it was I don't even know, but just going through so I went and I looked up the statutes, the federal statutes, and I was trying to do some little research because I'm not very familiar with federal laws. I know they're free range. Federal agents can pretty much do whatever they want, and
that's for sure.
doesn't no. There's really not a lot of defense. So I was just kind of curious to know like how fucked Marty kind of is. Like, not. I mean, to say it in like not so many words, but what I thought was interesting was that on the intent to like use our damaged computers, whatever, they access whatever, stop damage. I don't know, the words are so vague in federal court. But the first code that they rely on, I can't remember it off the top of my head, was like the actual crime or like the alleged actual crime, an act, and that's like using code information to access the computer. And then they cited a second crime, and that just all that the second statute did was tack on like 10 extra years. So there wasn't any act in the second statute in the in the complaint, but it was just like this will add 5 years and so someone will be like facing no more than 10 years. So I was like, well, that's a little. So now we just have statutes just to add on like time. Like there was no alleged act or crime associated with the second statute cited. It was just 5 extra years.
Penalty scheme. Like, I hate saying this, but like you'd be better off with murder than CFAA.
Well,
like,
it's because murder's a state crime. That's basically what it is. You're always better off doing crimes in state court than in federal court, because federal court is just
federal court is a crock. Like I think they have like a 99 or 98% conviction rate, which is obscene.
Because all of their definitions are.
Well, what they do is they come at you with a lot of charges, and they say if you don't take this, you're going to spend 100 years or 35 years or some ridiculous amount in jail. And
just
that kind of pressure will really break.
Well, they do that in state courts
down.
too. But what's extra interesting with federal court is like they'll have the charges, and then if you say if you look at them up and you read the definitions of the charges, they'll be like, crime will be defined as anything, and literally the definition for all of their charges is just anything we want it to be, and that's how they define everything. So that's how they're able to get like all these convictions. And the conspiracy one too, I thought was interesting because you need to have at least more than one person to conspire. You can't conspire with yourself because that's just crime of thought. And so Marty allegedly has is having these conversations with someone on Twitter. Well, who's that person? And
I think the indictment calls it him an unnamed co-conspirator, which somebody told me who's looked into it that it's just like works with the government.
Well, that person needs to be identified because Marty has a right to cross-examine that person, has a right to confront a witness, make statements against him, so they can't just sit there and say, oh, yeah, we have someone that conspired with him, and then never let Marty confront him, because that would be like, violation of due process.
Well, that's for his lawyer to, make sure that.
Oh, I know. It's just like I just thought
this person gets called as a witness.
Yeah, so I just thought it was funny how and they keep saying defendant and others, but I'm like, you've only cited one quote unquote other here, so where are the others?
What's interesting about others is there are kind of multiple people who might be considered involved by our government. I won't name names, but there are multiple people. But he's the only one really charged with this specific thing, right? Yeah. So, another interesting thing about this case is that, hearing him talk, for everyone who got to hear the whole thing there from him, and, if you read the Rolling Stone article, the website, freemartyg.com, he did this in defense of another, which is a specific defense you can raise in court.
Yeah, but that's still another one
that's an interesting one. It's the same, the problem with that one specifically is it's just like bringing up entrapment. It's one of those that if you bring it, it's not a likely help. But in this case specifically, it looks like the government is going to file a motion to suppress that and make it where you can't bring that as part of your defense.
Yeah, it does look that way.
And that was
said, so he can say that he was defending someone.
They basically want to make it where him and his lawyer cannot inform the jury of Justina or the actual reason he did this, and that's one of the motions they're going to try and file.
So part of self-defense or defense of another has to do. There is a level of force that you can't use more force than is being brought on. Force is can vary. It's a legal question. And that could be a question being brought is like what force was taken and what force is extensive force and what is reasonable force, and was Barty doing something in reasonable force?
And that's the question for the court and for the jury, of course. But at the same time, I think, depriving him of his ability to make that case to the jury is problematic, because it is the truth of this matter. He did it for a very specific reason, and that reason was to defend another. And the jury should be allowed to hear that information.
But also at the same time, I don't think the society, because it's technology is such a new form, and like how I think what he allegedly did or what they're claiming has happened is really fascinating in a lot of aspects too. And I liked how Rolling Stone did set it up as kind of like a political protest or a form of protest, because I think that's a very strong argument, for this specific situation. Sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's a podcast. Interrupt us as much as you want.
Okay. I definitely see how a lot of people understand it that way, but if this was about protesting, we could hold up signs, we could attend rallies, we could do podcasts. This was immediate. This was literally life and death.
No, and I get that, but you also kind of have to ask yourself, what's the best argument in court? Because the truth isn't always going to be the best argument sometimes, unfortunately. Right. So it's not what you
have to convince a judge and jury.
And and it's storytelling. Court is a theater, and it's always been set up that way. It's always supposed to be public theater. That's why it's open to the public. And just from an outsider's point of view, and sometimes when you get too emotional to certain things, sometimes you see things in a certain light that most people can't. And if most people can't, then a jury can't, which is always a good question to ask, because that's why I think the political protest, from my perspective, is a very strong argument, and also raises a very strong question. Is what happened, because according to some of the documents, it was just the Boston Children's website that went down. Phone lines were hacked. People could still call. They could still show up to the hospital. Like, the hospital didn't shut down, quote unquote, day-to-day lives. And they also said, like, research was, like, infringed, which probably just means Google. They couldn't Google, Wiki, what is mitochondria? That's probably what that meant. So it's like, okay, if just the website is down, well, that's just public. That's the website. It's the internet. No one owns the internet, and you can access the internet from any computer. It doesn't have to be specified on one computer. So did he access a computer if he just put down a website? I think it's a very strong argument. I think there's a lot of questions that can open up this, the form of protesting and the form of what had allegedly had taken place, because we are in a technology world. We're in a digital world. It's just going to get more digital and more technological. And I think that's a question, that's
a big question. I mean, how do we actually protest and raise awareness, especially in an event like this, where that awareness needs to be raised very quickly and no one's paying attention? And, how do you raise that awareness online? How do you protest in a way that's legal? Because in this country, we have the right to protest.
And the protesting is supposed to be, influential. So it's like, what is the most influential way to protest? Sometimes it's going to be online. Sometimes
it's a sit-in. And online, that sit-in looks like your website goes down.
And sometimes it's picketing with actual signs, So that's why I think it's a very strong question that society and we should be asking.
And taking it out of the context of this particular trial per se, and what argument should be made in court in his defense and how that should be resolved. If you just look at the overall situation, it seems like a really strange case, especially in terms of the decision to prosecute, if you ignore the fact that it involved the CFAA. It's akin to a good Samaritan seeing a crime happening and rushing across the street to help a victim, and then getting charged with first jaywalking and then obstruction of justice for impeding a police car who was trying to get to a scene or something. The crime that he's alleged to have committed.
And also on that same vein, let's say hypothetically there was no crime he witnessed, but he appeared to have witnessed crime.
Reasonable belief.
Yeah, ran across the street, thought there was a baby stuck in a car, smashed the window, turned out to be a doll. He still is trying to save a life.
Yeah, there'd be Good Samaritan laws covering that.
You're still trying to do the right thing. Sometimes you just, you get to it and go, oh, it wasn't what I thought, but at least I did an action in case it was something else. So I think it is a Good Samaritan-esque argument.
Yeah, it's just very strange that the prosecutor looks at this and like, well, okay, sure, this person believed reasonably enough that, someone was in danger and that they needed to take immediate action to help. And they took action to immediately help. And you know what? I found a way that violates the letter of the law. We are going to prosecute that. That's just like...
And it wouldn't
under
be
any
a
other
violation
circumstances.
if the CFA didn't exist, because the original conspiracy has to deal with specifically the government or the government entity computer,
right? Which
is a state hospital, a nonprofit hospital, a government financial institution was heavily named too. So it's not a financial institution; it's a medical institution. And
it does have a financial institution built into it in that the amount of donations it takes in and everything else has forced them to have a very strong financial arm.
But that's anything that needs money to operate. But I mean, at the same time, is it a government building?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
That's why we're all asking. No one really knows the answers to these questions.
I don't think it's a government building. But what really I don't know what the phrase is, sticks in my craw or whatever, is they're not even investigating the hospital. There's definitely a huge legal narrative or perspective to look at this through, but there's also just a moral perspective. What about the kids in this hospital? Why are they jumping so hard, so fast, so high to investigate?
Would that be something for the FBI? You know what I mean?
Except they're not.
No.
It would be, but they aren't paying attention.
No, I'm just saying, in terms of asking someone to just maybe look into it, I feel like
they did, and the FBI has been handed all kinds of information, including from whistleblowers. And they still didn't do anything.
What about on the state level? Is there no state level option to contact?
Well, I looked contacted. So Barry Pollock, whom already mentioned, was a lawyer who works on these kinds of cases, the longest tenured member of the Prevention for the Cruelty of Children board or something. And I asked for a copy of the report, and they passed with flying colors. There is no authority. If you get locked in this psych ward, they will work with the courts to take you away. And I don't know if you have kids, if you have siblings, but the fact that this could happen to anybody at any time with no recourse is terrifying. And I did an interview with Michelle Malkin, and she's a conservative pundit, and she has a kid with a similar diagnosis to Justina. And I think that part of the reason why she was so compassionate and so driven by it is because it could happen to anyone. If you are unlucky enough to have a rare diagnosis, you can be taken by the state.
Well, it's one of those unfortunate situations that for children too, if they have a rare diagnosis and becomes very complicated, it can very easily be misconstrued as an overzealous parent, because there are cases of it. And also sometimes with smaller children, depending on she was kind of in her teens, so she could, not theoretically, she had a strong, a more of a voice to say, no, I am sick. But it's for someone, if it's 5 and, or 7, kids it's easier to manipulate a small child like that and make them think that. So it's I can understand how doctors are very hypersensitive to very sick children, and they're always kind of erring on the side of caution of are they sick? Is this too much?
Well, in this case, this is not a question. This actually has a name. It's called they call it their parentectomy, separating the parent from the children. This has been happening for 20 years. There's a lot of cases.
It's not something by proxy.
It's not an accident that everybody gets named that gets this.
No, it's it's Munchausen by proxy is where it started, and then there's also another form of it, and one of the biggest things they do to immediately kind of see if it's if actual case is they have to separate the parents. Because there are cases
they
where
should evaluate if it makes a difference.
And usually it makes a difference right away. It's not a month-long process. Usually they separate the kid for less than 24 hours, and all of a sudden the kid's playing with blocks when he supposedly couldn't walk, or you know what I mean, and he's jumping up and down, and he supposedly had heart problems.
So in cases like this where they specifically do that, and then the kid only continues to get worse, is when a place like Boston Children's should reevaluate and say maybe the parents aren't insane. Instead, they go to court and try and take the kid away.
There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions with this, and it seems like on every side, everyone dropped the ball.
I think a lot of those questions are going to be answered in court as the parents are currently in court against,
absolutely.
against
And I was
the hospital.
surprised that there was nothing against the. My biggest question is, where was the gastroenterologist and the doctor that she was
The gastroenterologist.
Yeah, that's a big word. It's too many syllables for my mouth.
The one at Boston Children's?
Yeah, where was he?
He was there. He wanted to see her. They wouldn't let him.
I mean,
I don't like what I feel like maybe is not coming across is like everything you're bringing up is things that the hospital's banking on. There is such a thing as Munchausen by proxy. There is such a thing as doctors getting diagnosis wrong. What's happening here is not. They're banking on you relying on these things. Like, this is not an accident. This is premeditated. This is there is money to have children's wards of the state. It goes a little further than that. Like, you're allowed to do testing on kids without their parents' consent. Like, this is like I was just like you. You know, when you hear about things this crazy, it's hard to believe. But after like you do a lot of research and you see that this is across the board and not just Justina's case, it's actually way more terrifying that this was something that can happen to anyone.
Well, I mean, no, it's not exactly like I'm not naive to what's going on here. I know I have some limited experience. That's why I'm bringing up these questions, because the questions I'm asking are questions that I ask on a daily for, you know, and I know people who do this for a job. And so I find it odd, and maybe these are things that have changed drastically since this situation. Within the system.
Situation, lots of administration has changed, from the DCF to
so I'm just
BCH,
I'm very surprised that the doctor.
Figureheads.
It's too systematic and too systemic for that to change things.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like, we deal with all these like really big institutions that have their power ingrained, and it's like, what do you do when a child's life is at stake? Like, and we see this a lot, and I think we're seeing this change across the country where it's saying like, just because you have the law on your side doesn't make you right, doesn't make it the moral thing to do.
It also doesn't mean you're going to win.
Well,
even if the law's on your side, you can still end up being screwed in the end. So
I've said many times the idea, legal and illegal are not synonymous with right and wrong. These are different ideas, and sometimes they can be at odds. The right thing can be very illegal, but still the right thing.
God, it's been so, I used to love Law and Order. I watched all the series.
I can't watch all those things anymore.
No, you can't. Once you know too much.
Once you know how the actual process works.
It's so different, and they are so dirty, and they do not give two shits about anybody but getting notches in their belt. I am just like...
It's all about the color.
I always yell at the TV screen, especially when you watch like the more like ridiculous ones like Chicago PD.
I can't even.
And I'll get there, I'll be like, hey, that's not, oh yeah, it's confessing again. Yeah, you didn't have to get an attorney. It's like, I always yell, I'm like, oh yeah, good old Chicago PD, not doing anything wrong again. And no one ever wants to watch shows with me anymore. I don't understand why.
You seem like an awful show partner. Yeah.
I don't get it.
But, at the end of all of that, where we are is Marty's sitting in prison right now facing trial.
Yeah, for like over 16 months. Yeah.
And by the end, when he gets in front of a jury, it's going to be 16 months, right?
No, it was all well, please don't make me do math on air, but
isn't it 13 now?
He was arrested in February 2016, and now we're in June 2017. So, like time and space.
So he's been in prison. Yeah. He's been locked up since the arrest?
Yeah, so like let's just go like they let way more ridiculous people get bail, like
they let someone on manslaughter. Was it
that's what I'm saying. Like the CFAA is like it's, I don't think it's a coincidence that Aaron Swartz saw what was coming and ended it, or Jonathan James before him. Like this is not representative of justice at all. Like that's not what they're going for here.
So one more question. Sorry. So the jury trial is set for January
16th.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And Why?
So where we are right now is
because if he's locked up, you can't have 30 days without being brought into court.
Oh, wait for this.
Oh, you're so cute.
Yeah, that's not how anything works anymore. One, the NDAA passed.
In state courts, you
the
cannot go.
NDA passed for federal.
Yeah.
They can hold you as long as they freaking want.
You can't go 30 days in state without being brought
right
back
to a speedy trial doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that.
Yeah, because there's multiple court dates in between.
Of course.
An arrest and thing.
So in federal, the NDAA one says how they classify you means they could literally hold you for as long as they feel like. That changed that. That was a few years back that passed. But the thing that is more important in this one is, in fact, I was just at the court date yesterday where they have to do this again. So his court-appointed lawyer is, funny enough, getting a higher federal job. A job in D.C. that he was just offered to leave this case and go down there and do something else. And so he is getting a new lawyer, one that knows even less about tech,
what
to
happened
take
to
this case.
the one he had in Brooklyn?
That one they actually dropped that one. It was not working out well, so they ended up with a public defender.
You never trust a Brooklyn hipster.
And
That's what I've been saying from the get.
The public defender has taken this federal job right when a lot of motions and whatnot are supposed to be dealt with, and so the court date yesterday involved him and the new lawyer being in front of the judge with the prosecutors.
Shameless plug for a second. If anyone has like a ton of money and wants to sponsor a private attorney, freemartyg.com, please contact us. Thank you.
Yes, it is very, very important that they get some help. Because while
Bailey might be needing some money soon.
The new lawyer seemed like a nice enough person, just as a person. But while we were there, the judge called out everyone after dates were set for January 16th, and the end of August, the prosecution has to have its motions in, the end of August, the defense has to have its motions, like a motion to dismiss and other things that they're going to be trying to file in. And then the end of October, the defense or the prosecution has to have its rebuttal to those in, and so on and so on. So all these dates are set. The judge looks out at the now currently standing there two public defenders for Marty, one going away, one incoming, and says, you guys are going to need to file a wonderful piece of paper with us that says you're foregoing your right to a speedy trial because January 16th is not speedy. And he makes this weird smile, and I didn't hear the joke, but Bookbinder smiled at it like he didn't care that Marty had been in for so long. I didn't hear what he said. I wish I had. But so the defense actually is having to file paperwork again to say it's okay that again it's going to be pushed back many more months while he sits in jail. And part of that is because they're taking his public defender to DC and taking him off the case. And I mean that just seems calculated to me, but that's why it's taking so long. All kinds of fun stuff like that.
That just happened yesterday, but also it took his original magistrate, Judge Marianne Bowler, 5 months to issue a bail finding, which is supposed to be prompt. 5 months that he had to sit in jail just to be told he wouldn't get bail. Yeah, so it's really shady. And let me tell you something about this judge, okay? This judge sits on as a director emeritus on the Boston Foundation. Now, the Boston Foundation gives money to Wayside Youth and Family, which is where Justina was. So it's all kinds of shade, and he already had 2 judges recuse themselves. And this judge, who literally has ties to the hospital, who worked at Harvard and whose husband works at Harvard, which is
Harvard's the #1 landlord in Boston and Cambridge, so everyone's going to have some type of tie.
I'm sorry, Harvard. Let me restate. Harvard Medical School. Which
it's
is
all
pediatric teaching.
Yeah, it's all
which
Harvard.
has heavy connections.
Yeah.
No, but it has heavy connections to Boston Children's.
Yeah.
So this judge has heavy connections to Harvard,
so
which
it's just
has
been such
heavy
a shit
connections.
show. Yeah.
It's been nonstop with the various connections, and that judge specifically. I mean.
Now, if he gets a new attorney or a new appointed attorney, can he submit for bail? That's a question you can ask.
Yeah, because there's still a lot of questions here.
Yeah, because I know you can get multiple bail reviews on the state level.
Yeah, it's different. There's a lot.
Thank you. I know it's different, but you can ask these questions, being like bail, and you shouldn't, if you're going to be held so long in court, you need to be bringing up these things because it just doesn't make sense. The world just doesn't make sense.
The CFAA. So in the end, Marty's facing a possible 15 years for what amounts to a public-facing informative website and nothing more, being offline for a short period of time. This is more time than rapists get. And again, a public-facing website was offline. That's it. And he's facing 15 years, and he's going to be in probably 2 years before the end of trial. Utter insanity, everyone. Please visit freemartyg.com. That's FREEMARTY.com. There is a donate link. There is a bunch more information. There's more information on why they did this, how to contact people. So get involved. And thanks, Dana, for coming on. Do you have anything else you want to say to everyone? Putting her on the spot.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for showing support. Every tweet, every Facebook like, every share, every dollar, it all adds up. So thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to take a short break here, then come back with some more of the news. All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. Dana has left us after that awesome opening to the show, of course, about a horrible tragedy. What a wonderful word.
That's a word you
I
used,
make
yeah.
up words
Dana has
all
left the
night
building.
I'm still chewing
long.
on a Skittle, guys. Sorry.
So we are, of course, going to ask you to visit freemartyg.com again, but we are also going to talk about the wonderful latest news.
Oh, we had so much news. It's getting huge.
Mhm.
Huge.
Tons of news.
And so
Where should we begin?
I love my guests. And I love my
me.
co-hosts.
I love
and
me.
I love everyone
I
here.
love you.
Saholics
So we are
Anonymous,
going to talk about the travel ban, and
It starts tonight.
Trump goes to France to get trolled, I believe, and North Korea, Senate healthcare. I mean, these are all such positive topics.
Yeah. North Korea.
So,
Uplifting show.
of course, we start with the travel ban 2.0. And it actually went into effect about 45 minutes ago, as of recording this at
Yeah, I'm trying to find the AP app.
8:45 p.m. And the Supreme Court has an interesting test, and this test is,
It's a bona dude.
credible claim of bona fide relationship, and that's what's going to let you in the country or keep you out of the country. It's crazy because like bona fide isn't in any way a well-defined
according to
term.
At SCOTUS on Twitter, it was actually a bona dude relationship that he had to prove. In that case, I will be anyone's bona dude. Well, not anybody's, but anyone that needs to stay in the country.
Open-minded. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Really about civil liberties here.
I mean, the immigrants really hold the country together, man.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, Elon Musk.
The way this actually works at this point is if you can't sufficiently establish a close relationship, you are banned for 90 days if you are from Libya, Syria, Iran, Somalia, Yemen, or Sudan.
That's what you
And
get.
120 days if you are a refugee from any country. And that's just, my biggest problem about this is if nobody had actually fought this in the first place, it would have already been done.
Okay,
It
so
would have
that's
already expired, right?
That was my biggest thing. So when this first went into effect, the revised ban, right? On March 6th, they tried to put into effect. So 90 days for traveling would have been expired on June 4th. And the whole reason why they said the EO needed to exist in the first place is because they need to redo all the vetting procedures, and they need to renegotiate and put in harsher procedures to vet people coming in. And then the 128 days for the refugees would have expired on July 4th. And they keep arguing that they need this for homeland safety and they had information that it's a national security interest, but it's but no one's asking them, well, what new vetting procedures have you come up with in this whole time that you've been arguing it?
They certainly haven't proposed any publicly.
No, they're not even talking about the vetting
it's
procedures.
been a non-issue to them, which I would imagine is going to be something that plays poorly for them in court when SCOTUS says, well, you wanted this 90-day ban. So it's been way more than that. What have you come up with to address this thing that's the reason that you did this? And they're going to be like,
Yeah. And also,
I don't know.
Nothing.
Also, the entire time that like it wasn't in effect when you wanted it to be, nothing happened.
Yes.
So
I
what
wouldn't
was
say
the
nothing happened.
nothing
I mean,
happened into
a white American did do a terrorist attack in the United States of America, which is the average for terrorist attacks.
that happens every
within our
day,
border.
but we can't like deport white people who are Americans. Unfortunately, I wish, but we can't. But but
you know,
nothing.
on Facebook that gets you banned.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get banned by the time we stop recording and I try to log in. But it's like nothing happened on our planes. Nothing's happened by refugees in this whole time period that they wanted to put into effect. I mean, granted, other things have happened in other countries, but that's not what they're arguing.
Now, one thing I have to say is that it's been very interesting to see the reporting on the Supreme Court ruling on this, because it's been portrayed widely as this big victory for Trump. But if you actually look at it, it's not really.
No, it's just a decision to hear a case. And guess what? It
Well-
only takes 4 Supreme Court justices to decide whether to take on a case or not.
Well, I mean, even if you look at the actual decision regarding reinstating the partial travel ban, 6 justices voted to reinstate part of it, and the other 3 wanted to reinstate the whole thing. And people are like, well, see, all the justices wanted to reinstate part of it, at least part of it, so clearly it's fine.
Well, they kept
But that's
saying
not
that-
true.
And they also kept saying, Trump kept talking about it as a unanimous decision. And it's like a ruling. They called it a ruling. And it's like, no, they didn't rule on anything. They said they would hear your arguments, and they said they will allow parts of it to go into place while you make your arguments.
And the thing is, if you actually look at what the 6 justices held when they made their decision on whether to reinstate portions of the ban, essentially what they did was they said that literally anyone who would have standing to sue in the first place, the ban could not go into effect on. Literally, the portion of the ban that went into effect are people that it only applies to people that wouldn't have legal standing to sue and therefore wouldn't be able to bring a challenge to court in the first place. That means that the court can still look at the whole thing later and be like, yeah, no, this is clearly unconstitutional. It doesn't in any way, shape, or form help Donald Trump's case or say that it's perceived favorably by the justices, well, except for the 3 that wanted to reinstate the whole thing.
Let me guess. Thomas and Gorsuch and what? Alito?
Yeah, I think that's right. But anyway, like the other 6, they aren't saying that this says anything positive about the merits of the ban. It says that the actual the text of the executive order itself contained something that was on its own a constitutional power of the president and would exclude some people that wouldn't be able to bring a legal challenge.
Yeah.
But there's already a legal challenge, so, those people don't have to be able to sue in the first place. All that's saying is that the ban, can affect them until the court reaches a decision.
I was having a little bit of a, not an argument, but I was kind of like playfully debating it with someone who's like a little bit conservative and like jokingly was like, he's like, what does it matter? It's like, they're not like American citizens anyways. And like, we can maybe we don't want them all coming in, quote unquote. And he was just kind of being facetious and like a little bit eccentric in his talks. Like, and I said no matter what, we cannot ban anyone based on religion. That is not an American thing.
Yeah, the
You cannot-
Constitution doesn't simply apply to U.S. citizens.
And
Anyone under U.S. jurisdiction.
You cannot make an executive order that says I ban X religion. That's not American. And then you can kind of see he kind of succumbed a little bit. He was like, yeah, okay. So it's just like, I mean, I get that some people are going to be. There's always been this kind of anti-immigrant sentiment, in a lot of countries. There's always going to be that flavor that's going to people are going to have. But at this end of the day, no one can sit there and say, I want to ban a religion. It doesn't matter what religion you want to ban. You can't ban it.
Yeah, literally, the president's powers are derived from the Constitution. The president and any other aspect of the federal government does not have the power to do something that contravenes the Constitution, legally speaking.
The first thing that we wrote down to.
Yeah. Yeah, it might have been literally the First Amendment.
It just seems more and more nowadays, it's like the lowest common denominator possible meaning of being an American is just simply you were born here. It's not that there's values that you stand for. It's not the idea of religious freedom. It's not the idea of an open rulings on anything. It's just literally you were born here.
Well,
so you get
I'm
to...
not even sure that's entirely true because there's a lot of these people that are very focused on this sort of concept of being a real American who won't even acknowledge that, like, half of the country that was born here doesn't agree with them on these issues, and they want to pretend those aren't real Americans either.
And there's still an argument of whether Puerto Rico are like the Puerto Ricans are Americans or not. Like, I mean,
They're gonna try for statehood now, so
I
we'll see.
can't wait. Get in. And my favorite part about that is
Get
it brings me
in
back
the
to like
bus.
4 years ago when I accidentally overheard like these like drunk girls at the beach and they were talking about flags. And they're like, if we like add another state where we have to redo all the flags, and then they started being like, that's gonna ruin everything.
Now that's a good reason right there.
Yeah,
See?
What an argument.
if only we'd thought of that sooner and had never had to redo our flag at all.
Do we
in the
have to
past.
add
All of
them
the
in
flags.
threes? Do we
Does
have to
she-
like add them in threes now, or I mean, what is their solution?
No, their solution was they had to redo all the flags.
And they're not doing it. No, they're not having that.
Yeah, no, that's too much work.
Uh-huh.
It's too much work.
So welcome to the podcast where you get your news from drunk girls on a beach.
Oh, I
Several
love
years
them.
ago.
I love them.
Oh.
It's usually me.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything. That was probably me.
So right now we are waiting on a lot more information on this wonderful ban.
Hawaii's already issued a court challenge about what Trump has identified as what constitutes a bona fide relationship and what doesn't. They've already challenged it in court tonight.
My favorite part is still that, you know, the White House tried to walk back time and time again the idea that this was a ban. And every time the staffers, the press secretary,
tweets.
Trump would then tweet that it was a ban.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
travel ban.
it's gotta be like the worst job in the world to work there trying to do PR to cover his ass.
Yeah.
Because every single time they come out with some sort of statement like, oh no, the president didn't mean that. He meant this other thing entirely. Trump's like, no, everyone listen. I meant exactly the thing that person just said I didn't mean. Like,
Yeah.
Poor people that
Aw.
work there.
It's got to be like, I mean, at this point, why even try? You know, like, I mean, I give half of the people credit that still work there, that still show up on time and are still wearing like normal clothes and not sweatpants.
I'm just waiting for the day that good old Sarah Huckabee there comes out and you know, gets questions and is getting pounded by the questions and then finally just says, you know what? I don't fucking know. I just want her to
I feel
look
like
at the
Sean's-
camera.
I was expecting that to go with either her or Spicer.
I think Spicer
coming
will say
out
that first.
with the bottle of alcohol and just taking swigs
Just
like,
set it
I
down.
can't handle it anymore.
I think Spice, if anyone was going to quit in glorious fashion in front of the press corps, it will be Sean Spicer.
You think so? I could
He
just see him
probably would.
freezing
so
up there.
sad. He is so sad.
I could just see him
inside.
going so depressed internally that he just literally stands there and doesn't say a damn word for an entire press conference.
He might like. I
and
feel
just-
like he
I could
might
see
curl
that
up in
already
fetal
happen.
position.
yeah, just a catatonic state up there, really. You know?
I mean, but Huckabee Sanders, she's got no soul, so I can't
No.
see her breaking down.
Well, I don't mean breaking down. I
could
mean, I
burn
think
from
just
the inside
giving
out
up.
or
Like
something.
there's a
Like-
subtle difference to that. Like
But she's got no soul, so I don't think she can like really do anything. I think she'll just like will get more eviler.
right. So now on this one, we're waiting for Hawaii's court case to see what that does, and we are going to move on. We are going to move on to Trump going to France
Oh, I can't.
For some reason, Macron invited Trump for Bastille Day on July 14th.
It's for a reason, all right.
Yeah,
it's to show him up.
Yeah.
It's to shake that tiny little hand again in aggressive fashion.
I mean,
doesn't
that
want
is my
to?
absolute assumption here that, you know, me and Mac were talking about this the other day, that with everything we've seen Macron do so far, you know, with like at the NATO meeting where he kind of was going in and then turned to Merkel, you
And
know.
then he
and
like
then they
extra
make our planet great again.
Yeah, and then he like
did the
and he
extra
held on
aggressive,
extra long.
the aggressive
yeah.
handshake.
and then called him out and said, "Oh yeah, no, I meant to do that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show him up in every subtle fashion I can."
So I think he's inviting him over there to do something. Like I'm expecting a
it's-
prank at this
It's
point.
really the timing of and doing it specifically for Bastille Day is just way too suspicious. Otherwise, that is the world's biggest coincidence.
You know what's gonna happen?
It's gonna be the 100th anniversary of the U.S. joining World War One.
Yeah.
So I
this
can
is how
see
I
there
imagine
being
it,
a reason, but I want to say this one thing. This one thing that that I think is hilarious about this whole idea is that, you know, Bastille Day attempts to celebrate, you know, the uprising, you know, and the revolution, and they were going after the oligarchs and the rich, and, you know, ignoring the fact that they killed more of the poor than they did of the rich, you know.
Oh, that's just a little
fact.
Yeah,
Don't
it's
care
a
about
little
that.
casualties of war.
But, you know, the
Facts,
oligarchs
yeah.
that they were specifically going after are best represented today by people like Trump. So they're bringing Trump over to celebrate the day that they killed most of the people like Trump.
That they stormed the government's prison.
So you know what's going to happen,
freed the
right? I've already
prisoners
got it.
and
I've already got
weapons.
the whole thing planned out in my head. He'll show up. He'll meet him at the airport, right, or whatever. He'll come down to stupid Trump stairs, and you know what? Baguettes are just gonna pelt his head. They're just gonna
Baguettes. They're just gonna throw bread at him.
Yeah, because I don't know anything else about France besides berets and baguettes.
Yeah, everyone will be wearing
That pretty
the
much covers it
horizontal
for me
black
too,
and white
actually. That's
striped
it.
Yeah, there's gonna be
shirts.
mimers putting him in a box, and then they're gonna ship him
Now
out
that's
to
just
sea.
stereotypes. That's not fair. That's not fair.
So he's going over there at a time when the public of France are polling at 14% say they have confidence that Trump would do the right thing in global affairs.
That's higher than America
That
right now.
same populace had an 84% on Obama on that. So we've lost a lot in terms of respect for our leader in France under Trump.
And not just France.
No, I respect the leader of France a lot.
Oh, the new
I have
one?
an
Yeah.
84% approval rating of him so far, and his looks.
So let's wait. It's a couple weeks away. We get to watch and see what happens when Trump goes to visit Macron. I think it's going to be hilarious. I'm waiting.
I
I'm
can't
hoping.
wait.
I think I might be getting my hopes up too high, but like I'm
a little
just-
worried about like setting up my expectations a little too high, but man, just everything about this screams that something's gonna happen there.
I watched Vegas Vacation this weekend, and I feel pretty prepared for the trip. Yeah.
That
I
sounds
gotta
like
say,
the
when
right
they
movie
drive
to
off in
prepare.
all the cars that Rusty won at the end
Yeah.
of that was a good scene.
Yeah.
They don't
It
even
was.
ask. They just look at him and like, okay, fine, we're getting in the cars. They don't sit there for half an hour like I would. Like, okay, where'd you get the cars?
Right.
Are they really in your name? Where did you get a license? Like they do none of that. They just like, nope, yeah. The way this week went, let's just get in the cars and go.
Get in the cars and hit you.
Don't ask questions.
But you know, so
Done.
that's that. That'll be fun to watch in a couple weeks. Now, how about war with North Korea? Because you
How
know,
about not? Can we opt out?
let's not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No thanks.
Well, it's funny because the House GOP committee repealed AMF or whatever you call it, the authorization use of military force. So they've repealed that. So hopefully he can't just like start a war willy nilly.
They just do like a hand size contest so they can end this real quickly.
Well, the committee vote isn't binding. It has to go to a floor vote. So they have to have the full House vote on it as well.
the committee just makes it where it is possible now to go to
right.
a floor
It has
vote.
to go to the committee.
And it was
then
adopted
can-
by a Republican majority committee. So
Yeah. No, I mean, it looks promising, but it's not there yet.
So where we've ended up is sanctions, rhetoric, diplomacy. None of this seems to be affecting the North Koreans, at least in leadership in any way. Of course, it is, you know, adding to the starvation of their people, but that's due to the fact that any and all resources in the country seem to be going towards their missile program and not food. And so,
Well, I mean, you don't really need to eat after a nuclear
What
war
do you-
begins.
Yeah, plus they got the methamphetamine program there too. That's really holding up the economy at this point. So
if taking
Like
out the
keeping the
leadership of
military
that,
together.
if taking out the leadership of the country that is obviously never going to pay attention, isn't the answer, then what is?
I mean, is that ever honestly?
It's never worked for us. I'm
No,
just saying.
But is taking out the Kim Jong Un dynasty? Is that ever gonna happen?
I
we
mean,
ever
with
get
his
to-
uncle dead, with his brother dead,
I mean,
with his cousin
is
dead,
the
at
global
this point,
community
you know,
ever going to get to a point with North Korea where we need to go in. Is that ever going to be a thing?
Is that more like a CIA Black Ops thing anyway, if it did happen? So
They did that a whole lot, and what they learned was it was a really bad idea. Not because I think they actually cared that they were, killing
We
those
really
leaders.
failed in Iraq with the.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like even in the, early 60s all the way up until the early 70s when the CIA just, killed all the Latin American leaders they felt like.
Well, we were trying to do that was like prepared for Iraq, and then we were like,
We've learned that, it might get rid of the guy they don't like, but it never turns out to work out in our favor.
Well, I mean, Chile apparently is still being broadcasted as a great success story.
About that.
Yeah.
Which is big hogwash. But,
But what do you do when none of the diplomatic, tools at hand actually help?
Yeah, or when you get to a point where you got a country that is so oppressive, so many human rights violations.
People are starving to death.
Literally. And they have these weird detention centers where not only are foreign captures and hostages
Breaking rocks.
but breaking
Hard
rocks, but
labor.
you've got half of his a majority of his people are in these. So when is it ever going to get to a point where global community says we need to save them? Because that's
Right.
Well, I think someone first has to come up with an answer of what action can be taken that actually makes the situation better rather than worse. And I
Yeah.
don't think anyone has a good answer to that at the moment.
I mean, do we let them just keep going down this crazy train? Because he's kind of young still, right? He's only in his 30s.
Very young to be
Yes.
a world leader at the level he is. But he's also taken out almost anyone family related to who might be a threat to his power. So if you get rid of him, who comes into the vacuum? We've learned that that's never works out
And
for us.
are
It's
half the
not a
people
good
that
thing.
work for him, are they just as greedy and manipulative too?
Well, according to the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, the threat is much more immediate now.
I mean, I kind of believe it, but I also don't want to at the same time because Trump is such a crazy person.
Yeah, do we want this coming to a head under a Trump presidency? Can we wait for the next guy?
Yeah,
I mean, given how many catastrophes have just occurred that have solely been him making things bad for himself, do we really want him trying to handle one that wasn't simply his creation? I don't think we do.
No, I don't.
At the same time, I mean, the people there on the ground might need some help.
They absolutely do.
But they've needed help since the first one.
Right. And we still don't have any answer of, what we can do that will actually help and not possibly make things even worse.
This is crazy at this point. I mean, I'm not saying I
It
have an
seems
answer.
like
I'm
this
just
'cause the
saying there
type of
needs to be
country-
one.
This is this country, I feel like everyone's just kind of been dealing with this country the way you don't want to clean your room and you just shove everything underneath the bed. Or you put, you sweep the floor so all the dust is in one corner and you just kind of put something over it. No one seems to actually it doesn't feel like a lot of people are really focusing on the atrocities inside the country.
Yeah, right now, they're only talking about caring because of the missiles.
Yeah.
So.
But they've had these missiles forever too, which is
Well,
why do
sure,
we
they're getting slightly better at what they're doing with them, though.
But I mean, the 1999 treaty, that, with the first Bush, the day after he supposedly signed it and agreed to it, he was like, "Oh, just kidding, psych," and we've just let them just do what they want since.
And that's because China is the one supporting them.
It's it's an unfathomable situation. I feel like it's gotten to a point where it's kind of hard to wrap your head around what is actually going on.
So they do another nuclear test. They've crossed a red line again. Trump is starting to draw some of these red lines. He seems like the kind of guy that actually will do something, unlike Obama, who drew red lines and then kind of did nothing. And maybe I'm okay that he did nothing because I don't know that I liked, exactly what he was planning on doing. But this guy specifically is going to do something when those red lines are crossed. So,
or he's not
And
even
it
going to draw red lines and he's just going to do something.
Yeah, and it probably won't be, some sort of well-considered, recommended by the military kind of thing. It'll be a spur-of-the-moment.
Eating chocolate cake at Mar-a-Lago type of
Right.
thing. Yeah. And it's probably going to be just drop them. Drop them wherever you want. Yeah, I got all these bombs. Just let them loose.
I don't think we have an answer for that one. I don't think anyone does. I am
I just hope
scared
the answer
of what
happens
happens.
after we impeach him.
Right.
Yeah, so that in the end is the correct answer. Let's get rid of him first and then deal with this with someone who, I won't say is sane, but I'll say just is actually intelligent.
Yeah, someone
Like can actually understand the problem in the first place.
At least has some kind of connection to reality.
I just want someone who doesn't always end up believing whatever the last person in the room with him believed.
or just talks, or just like
Has a
quotes
mind of his own.
Fox and Friends at 6 a.m. on a Saturday.
I also specifically want someone who doesn't, make fake Time magazine covers of himself.
I need them to
and hang
understand the
them.
difference between a real Time magazine cover and a fake Time magazine
critical
cover.
distinction.
So North Korea, we are waiting for them to possibly do a nuclear test, and then that crosses a line, and
Well, they could just
then we
like
see what
not
happens.
do anything, North Korea. Like you could just totally just not do anything.
Please. And now we move on. We move on to
another bomb.
Senate healthcare, which I
It's a real health bomb.
not lovingly refer to as Turtle Care. And Turtle Care here by wonderful Mitch McConnell and friends was supposed to be voted on and is now going to be held past the holiday break. It is no better than the last few times they've come up with something to deal with this. It still knocks 22 million people off of care. It knocks like 15 million of them off almost instantly, and it is massive cuts to Medicaid, and of course they are.
It's almost it's
800 and something billion.
Yeah, it's like 830 or something like that. It takes deeper cuts over a longer period of time, and then Trump, of course, tweeted out a fake graph from the CBO score. He tweeted out this like line graph, and he's tweeting out being like, the Democrats are lying. We don't cut Medicaid. We're actually spending more. And it's like, well, if you actually have eyeballs,
look at my line graph that proves this.
Yeah, here's the line graph Steve Bannon made for me in Photoshop and told me to use it. And no one's actually going to have access to the real CBO score document that sees that there's actually no line. There's only one line graph that looks nothing like it. And then the first House bill, their CBO has 0 line graphs at all. So it's like, And then the other thing too with because I read the whole the bill, the whole 142 goddamn stupid pages of it, 45 now with an amendment. And first of all, half of it is illegal because you can't legislate during a reconciliation period, and they've now criminalized abortion throughout it, which can't do that. And the other part is that it makes it so a lot of the cuts, the most deepest cuts, happen after a 10-year window, which the CBO only scores 10-year windows at a time. And in 2019, they eliminate all essential health benefits requirements. So employers can now opt out of essential health benefits in 2019, and states can opt out. They also, no one's really talking about this. It creates like this weird disability registry where they want to revise what's called, I think it's the CMS 64 form, which is usually just a financial form that states will fill out saying, this is how much they spent, this is how many people they have enrolled, this is how many, these are the numbers that have gone to X amount of things. Now, this will create, they want to revise the form and have states immediately start filling this form out, which documents how many children they have who have lifelong disabilities that impair them, that are either mental disabilities, physical disabilities. If it's physical, they need to know what kind of physicality of it. They want to know how many specifically they have, in what facilities. So it creates this weird disability registry because they want to know how many states have high-risk pools, and so they can block grant out Medicaid programs. It's a fuck mess. And, the Republicans have become a party that says, hey, we don't really give a shit if you live or die.
Because they actually, some of them just don't care. They're getting, reelected on money donated by the people who are going to profit from this. And some of the others actually are dumb enough to believe that when they provide this free market system, that the free market will drive costs down and will make everything available. And then once costs are driven so far down, the only way they're going to be able to get their premiums back up is by offering all this extra care to you if you sign up for insurance. They actually believe that. mean, it's as bad as trickle down, it's supply side, it's everything that the Republicans believe in that specific vein is all wrong and always has been, and has always been proven mathematically to fail. Economically, we have decades of proof that none of this type of thinking actually works.
Show me a line graph that proves it doesn't work, though.
And and it's just it's insane. The one interesting issue here is if they were bringing it to a vote before the break, we might get this thing voted down, which I would love to see. Now that they're going to have this time over the break, McConnell has almost $200 billion to use as a bargaining chip to start to buy off these people who aren't willing to vote for in its current form.
There's been speculation that Joe Manchin from West Virginia had a bill that he had proposed earlier that basically taxed the pharmaceutical companies who make opioids. And they taxed it 1 penny per pill for opioid pills. And there's been talks that they might tack on that amendment just to get his vote. But at the same time, that's not going to do anything else. It's going to create like a pharmaceutical tax, which already should exist. But just because you tax them doesn't mean these people who are addicted to pills and opioids
There's no
in
law
those
stopping
states,
them from raising the price. So
not just that, but they won't have Medicaid to actually have coverage.
Yeah, so they won't be getting the pills anyways.
And they won't be getting the treatment.
And that money's not going to be rolled back in to cover more Medicaid.
Yeah.
So right now he's buying himself some time, McConnell is, to use all the spare cash left over from what they cut to actually buy more votes, basically, to negotiate, we'll give your state this, we'll give you that, do you want to add this amendment? And I'm kind of upset that they put it on pause. I wanted them to vote so it would get its no.
Yeah, I agree. Especially
more time just means they're going to pass something.
And they're going to add on. They're going to do backdoor deals because they always make these deals in the fucking gym, or the showers together. One of the things that struck me was that in the bill, everything was kind of there was a lot of talk. They wrote the bill as if everything was going to take into effect basically June 1st of this year. They didn't even have the bill. They didn't even have the bill finalized until the 22nd, or whatever that Monday was before the Friday they released it, or the Thursday. So I'm like, why are you writing a bill that it didn't even exist at the time you're enacting it? Or you're having it saying that it's going to be as of June 1st, 2017, that da-da-da-da-da.
I mean, I think they were being optimistic.
Yeah, and no one's kind of calling them out hey, why why are you acting like this bill is going to happen this year?
I think Rand Paul really sums this all up best for the Republicans and what most of them should be feeling, and what I'm happy they're feeling when he says, quote, "It's sad in a way. We control all three branches, and yet we're not interested or able to do what we've pledged. People are too focused on getting more federal subsidies and other things, not on the pledge itself." And you know what? I don't agree with their pledge. I don't want them to go through with it. So I think it's great that that's how he feels right now, because I think personally he's a horrible human being.
Well, Paul Ryan's been dreaming about cutting Medicaid since he's been drinking kegs in his college days. I just don't understand. We're talking about people's lives.
People
Literally.
will die on average. What was it? 1,300?
1,300 people will die per year for every million people that lose insurance. That means almost 30,000 people will die every year just from having lost the care they got under Obamacare if this bill were to pass.
They also said the tax cuts of the 400 most wealthiest people it was the same amount that it would have cost to finance Medicaid coverage for 700,000 people or something.
Something
like that. Where it was it's you basically can the tax cuts for 400 people gave coverage to an extraordinary amount of people, American citizens.
So I think we kind of go out on healthcare here with Elizabeth Warren and her wonderful comments the day that the CBO score came out, calling this bill a tax cut for blood.
Yeah, Yeah, it's blood money.
Yeah, 100%.
This is blood money. Poor people will die so rich people can have tax breaks.
Not to mention our grandparents will get kicked out of nursing homes.
And, I hate to have to expand this, but it's not just poor people. Like, there are people in the middle class. The people that were going into medical bankruptcies before Obamacare weren't just
a lot
poor
of them
people.
were middle class.
Yeah.
And their jobs are going to be able to cut
And
back on what insurance they offer them.
employer-based health insurance is going to get affected. 10% of Medicaid recipients are veterans. What happened to supporting the troops? It is the most vulnerable people in society with the poor children.
But it's not just them.
Yeah, it's going to affect all of us. All of us, except for the 400 top earners in the country. They're going to get great breaks. So I guess in a sense, it is still affecting them.
Yeah, it's just, positively.
Yeah, and then not so for the rest of us.
Well, there we go. We're going to learn a lot more about this when they come back from the break and we hear what negotiations they've had and what amendments they might be adding and where the pork is going. So we will revisit this once we have more information. Before we go here for the night, before we end this, I want to make sure to remind everyone again of the first half of the show. And Martin Gottesfeld and his wife Dana were nice enough to join us. And everyone should be visiting freemartyg.com. We'll link to it on the social media and the website. And if anyone can help at all, they definitely need some donations for the legal fund as they are fighting this one. And trial starts in January next year. So visit the site, help them out if you can, inform everyone, share things. There's a great Rolling Stone article out today that needs some more love. So get it out there on Facebook, on Twitter for them. And that's going to be us for the evening.
The GreggHoush Show was created by GreggHoush, executive produced by co-host Derek Gowres, and co-hosted by Kayla Avery. Other contributors include producer and writer Anna Jeffrey, co-host producer David McGuffin, and writer-engineer Robert Tortora. Theme music for this show was produced and recorded by Geneva de Colbert. Our interns include co-host Casey McLaughlin, writer-engineer Alec Greeny, writer Maddie Cicero, and associate producer, writer, and announcer William Kennedy. You're listening to New Revolutionary Radio, your call to action. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GreggHoush Show and on Instagram at GreggHoush. If you like what you've heard and want to be a part of it, check out patreon.com/GreggHoush Show. In exchange for funding our programming, you gain access to exclusive content such as uncut editions of our podcast. We have new episodes every Thursday night. We hope you listen in.